Thinking of investing, working, or starting a business in the cannabis industry? We've got you covered right here on Plant Problems. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, Plant Problems takes a different approach to cannabis than what you're seeing and hearing from the mainstream media. Come along with Tony and be in the know about how to invest, work, or start a cannabis business. Let's get the show started with your host, Tony Frischknecht.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Plant Problems. I'm your host, Tony Frischknecht. And today I've got a special guest coming on. We're actually going to be talking about some mergers, acquisitions, a lot of other cannabis stuff, but also what is happening so quickly right now, and that's consolidation happening in our industry. And that's from the ground up. That's from your growers and your suppliers all the way up to the retailers. And my next guest has tons of experience. He comes with decades of grow experience. He has also personally taught me invaluable growing tips and back when I was a grower. And he's also full of a wealth of knowledge of the industry and what's happening. And he's on the ground on a daily basis. He's been working for a very large nutrient company over the last 7 years. And I have him on today because the nutrient company's has 3 decades of experience. So they were in way ahead of most of us. And, you know, there's a lot to be learned from those very, very pioneering guys. And that's why I brought this gentleman on. So I've got Chet Melton with Canna Nutrients. He's a really close friend of mine, and he's following the tracks of daily things that are happening in cannabis because he sees it firsthand. So, Chet, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on, man.
Thank you so much for having me. This is always a pleasurable experience. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And, you know, one of the things I want to get back to is start of this whole thing when especially here out of Colorado in the green rush, right? We had the green rush coming in, and
you and I coined that term before anybody else.
Yeah. And we got to experience it on the front lines. And Chet, what brought you to Colorado?
You know, metaphorically, it was a sound. It was a feeling. It was. I was working retail in Texas, and every week my regulars would sort of be less and less. And so when it got to like 85, 70% of these people I didn't see. I said, what's going on? And everybody's all, don't you know, we're all moving to Colorado. And I was like, I used to live there. Like, what? And I visited, and then I was like, man, you could just feel this cultural suck, and not as in a suck like it's a bad way, but as in a vacuum. So I just got caught in the wave and moved up with a whole bunch of other people from other regions that were knowledgeable but didn't want to be illegal.
So you were selling nutrients and different supplies in Texas, and then you decided to move up here. Okay.
Yes.
So once you got up here, we experienced, Chet and I met in a hydroponic store together, and it was one of the fastest growing in Colorado at the time. And to take us back a little bit on those first couple months, I mean, I have some vivid memories of things that I saw that just were blowing me away. So you mentioned the vacuum that was happening. Once you got here and you're working in the store, what did you see come in the door?
I saw customers from every region of the United States. I saw, big ballers from Atlanta. I saw these guys who had sort of done the underground scene in Los Angeles. People that were from Kansas, that were from Maine, that were from Florida, that they had all just decided to take their wares or their desires to be a part of a culture that now gave them some sort of a semi-safe canopy to participate in.
And as that was happening, there was a flood of cash that was coming in as well.
A ridiculous flood of cash. And, it was the beginning of what, you were like, well, why don't we regulate this? Why can't we get a banking system? Because we all know from our past experiences, you covered this in your book. Cash is where the evil lies. Cash is where the underground lies. If you can shed daylight and have numbers out that are posted on a ledger, then you can't hide much. But the underbelly that cash covers was always there. As we were like, well, we want to be legal, but yet you're forcing us to use the currency of illegalness.
Exactly. Well, I remember certain scenarios when, when you mentioned a few minutes ago about the big ballers coming in. I mean, how did those guys pay?
They paid in cash, and they paid. And listen, I don't want to. It was the what is the form that you have to fill out? The 1089, the $10,000 cash form.
Yes.
I was always taught that you had to fill that out. Well, that was always a point of contention. And they wanted to fill it out, but at the same time, you tell the federal government that you're using $10,000 worth of cash, they want to know where it comes from. And you're like, well, it's coming from an industry that you don't want to participate in. That federally you're saying, but the state of Colorado is saying, yeah, this is an industry that's viable and going to lead to, income and tax revenue and things like that. And it was sort of that clash between people who are used to using cash and people who are used to having legit business, which don't always, fit.
No, exactly. I remember scenarios where, they were giving us a cash counting machine because that's literally how much cash would take us sometimes hours when somebody would come in to purchase large orders. And we're talking 6-figure orders in cash. Most of us were pretty comfortable with taking them in another room. However,
yeah,
these were our daily occurrences that I remember and I saw. And it takes a lot of time to count 20s.
Yeah, and to make sure they're legit. That was the other issue. Is counterfeit money was everything.
Yeah.
There was
that's right. We did have. We had that counterfeit money.
That you had to be. Once there's that underground element, everything can be forged, whether it's knowledge or currency or equipment or things like that. So that was always an issue.
So we had a lot of people coming in from other states, as you mentioned. But what did we see new in the market that we hadn't seen before?
Well, I think that what we saw a lot of things that were questionable, like the Biowave. This left a lot of room for the snake oils and the hucksters to come in and sort of capitalize on. Now, I'm not saying the Biowave was either positive or negative. I'm just saying it was untested, unresearched, and very expensive. Mm-hmm. And there were other items that were like that. They were like, well, we're going to capitalize on the lack of knowledge or the lack of industry culture. There was a culture, but there wasn't an industrial culture. It wasn't like, well, you always use this in this set of greenhouses, and you always use this. So I saw a lot of, untested products, unresearched products, and a lot of, like what we saw that came out right at the same time. Coincidentally, it wasn't a cause and effect. It was just it was the large hoods, these ochos.
Which is a massive reflector that they were having that said it could spread a large light ray. Guys, going back to the Biowave. So I want to talk about this for a minute because this was a crazy contraption that was created, right? So give us just kind of the idea behind it as what was supposed to be, right?
It was a mechanical piece of equipment that was plugged in, and it spun some geometric designs that would create this wave, and this wave was supposed to either disrupt insects, disrupt fungus, disrupt pests, and at the same time, the research could go one way with that or the other way, which was it would stimulate stomata and growth production and sort of give you, a pot. I mean, there was this positive vibe sort of getting redefined as a scientific thing. And so you've got our culture is based in hippies, so a lot of them want this positive energy.
Yeah, very good point.
Proof. It's like, well, yeah, man, you just put all positive energy in there. It's like, well, it's just geometric design spinning around causing this hum,
which is kind of, if you look back to the snake oil days, it was kind of the cure-all for situations in your grow room, right? That's what they claimed anyway.
And, in like many industries, if you make something a little more expensive than it actually should be, it becomes much more attractive.
How much was that thing?
God, I
think it was like $8,000. I remember something like that.
Yeah, $6 to $8,000.
Just completely absurd.
With no scientific research, with no studies. Yeah.
And
so which is the same with LEDs, back then.
Yeah, exactly. So as you're seeing the transition into the legal market, what kind of products, what has happened to the product industry as a whole in the supply shops? Are you seeing big changes in there? Because I know you're in a lot of them and you're talking to these owners all the time. So what kind of changes are we seeing just in the supply side?
Well, we're seeing, one issue is supply itself. There is a lack of all commodities and materials right now. Like the microchip and the power supplies and the things like that, they have a smaller effect than on the car industry or other, other utility industries. But we're seeing, so even raw materials like cocoa, we're getting a depression in the stock, the commodities of that market. But we're seeing new technology, or more importantly, I would say the advancement of newer technology. The LED is making its huge leap and getting its stamp of approval and its recognition of something that's actually a viable product in this industry. Where
you've seen some really large leaps and bounds in LEDs at this point.
Yes, I have. And, it separates a little bit from my belief, but, I can't argue with what the commercial market is demanding and using as a standard.
Why is that? Why is that happening now?
Well, I think one is due to energy consumption, which is related to two things. 1,000-watt HPS is relatively inefficient with its energy consumption. So the ballast and the bulb are pretty productive, but at the same time, if you compare 1,000-watt HPS to a 600-watt HPS, you're getting more energy consumption with less production as you get larger in the wattages, when you get away from something about 400, 360 to 420, which were the original wattages. But as the industry grew and as people dictated to manufacturers what they wanted and not manufacturers dictating to consumers what they want, which is always a game in any industry, is that you got these larger wattages, which were less efficient. And so I say the efficiency hump is at 600. After about 600, it goes back to it. You're losing efficiency. So, and they create a lot of heat once you get with these higher wattages. Well, the LED companies recognized, and so consumers recognize, that if I could spend less energy, kilowatts, and at the same time not create as much heat, which would then require, the more heat, the more AC, the more temperature control, the more atmosphere control, which is also another kilowatt sucker. ACs don't run without any energy, and fans, which are essential even, but they're less essential they're more of just a stimulant as they are, a vacuum, a HVAC sort of solution. So you get to use less energy, which then of course helps your bottom line.
Why were the pioneers so set on the HPSs? And HPSs, guys, for those of you that are listening here, I know Ted is getting pretty technical, but we're just talking about different bulbs and these bulbs that we're discussing. I mean, how far did they go back? We're talking a couple decades, 2-3 decades, right?
I mean, the original grow lights are actually just warehouse or street lights. Metal halide or high pressure sodium. Metal halide usually has a more blue spectrum, which gives you more vegetative growth.
Mm-hmm.
And an HPS, a high pressure sodium, has a more orange or red spectrum, which influences flower or fruit growth. And so both of these were, one is HPS, blue is going to consider be cool, and HPS, which is the red, is going to be considered warm, and so depending on your industrial use before greenhouse was warehouses and street safety, street lighting. So, and the reason that this culture didn't want to change so much is it's an insular culture. The greenhouses evolved. They quickly, but they have that luxury of also having outdoor, light. So they're just trying to supplement that outdoor light, give it a longer day, so you can control your flower process, or have a growth cycle in the winter, which would usually interfere with fruit and flower production. So you want to, you influence that by adding more hours, to your day of light. And this culture is pretty insular and doesn't believe the first thing it sees. And that's good, because it usually gets tricked if it does. So,
well, we just mentioned back about the snake oil products, right? I mean,
yes.
How many hundreds of products have been thrown through the industry like that over the last 30, 40 years?
It's I don't know. And there's it gets to be to the boy a lot. And it gets to be to the boy, if you've seen enough, you get to that, which I think is actually a larger cultural thing, which is the boy who cried wolf. You see enough bad examples, hey, where's the wolf? I was called and I see no wolf. So one day when they're like, no, this is the wolf. This is the shit. This is the thing that works. Like, fuck it now, dude.
People don't believe it.
No.
Well, let's get to talking about it. So you had brought up the LEDs, and they're being adapted by these corporations that are growing. And I think, part of what we're seeing too is that adaption, and these guys that are actually breaking down the data, and they're starting to understand efficiencies like you mentioned before, but these guys are also starting to consolidate, and these mergers and acquisitions are happening, and we're seeing it, as I mentioned before, from the ground up. I mean, we're seeing it in the grow stores that you're working at. We're seeing it, the big one was Alfira and Tilray that just went through, that was supposed to be a combination of by revenue. They said they're supposed to be the largest cannabis company in the world. We're also seeing really shitty numbers in a lot of the Canadian markets. We're seeing a big shift from Canada to US now. And because we are a large market. So what are some of the hot ones that you've been, coming across where you're like, this is a really interesting one?
I think the biggest, which I think everybody who's spent a week in this industry, was the True Leaf purchase. That was a big one. That was the one you kind of want to pay attention to, and because that's gonna be that's the biggest one I know so far, and I know True Leaf real well. So what is their standing there in the country? Where do they hold all their cards right now?
East Coast.
They're a little bit in Maine. I think they're in Massachusetts. I haven't seen them. Have you seen them over there in Denver, in the Colorado West Side?
No,
they're not in California.
They control basically the Florida market from that's where they've started, right? And for those of you out there that are not familiar with the Florida market, there is very, very limited license. I think less than 15, right, across the entire state.
I think there was originally like 23, but the problem was 11 of them were given to one entity. It's like I said, I think we talked about this previously in the last podcast, which is you've got these legislatures, like in Florida, they all live in or work out of Tallahassee, the capital.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they come together and decide to do something, it isn't to benefit the general public. It's to benefit them, their fraternity brothers, their men's, the people they have drinks with after they go to court or to legislate. So it's a good old boys club, and and so that's what's sort of constricted that Florida market. But, you've got to consider this consumer. There's a large consumer base down there. So,
yeah, that's one of the big, the big footholds they have is they control that market. We're seeing companies like Green Thumb, another big one, Cresco. We're seeing Acreage, yeah.
Columbia Care. That's the, listen, I can't play the stock market. I did the whole, the big one that was at first was when Hawthorne, a Scotts Miracle-Gro subsidiary, got into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And my real quick personal story is, I bought a large amount of that stock after I heard some acquisitions, and I thought, well, this thing's going to jump, and it actually dropped. So after about 2 quarters, I decided I was done with that, and of course, 2 years later, it quadrupled in value. So do never listen to me when it comes to stock market advice. I can better to tell you what's going to come up on two-sided dice than I am going to tell you how the stock market plays out. But I do see trends. Like I was right about the Scotts Miracle-Gro. I just wasn't patient. And so
that's a big part of it. That's a big part of it. I did the same trade. I waited a bit longer. I think I gained 30% on my cash, and then I pulled it out and I went to something else. But it's a matter of longevity, right? And focus. So I appreciate you sharing that story with us, because not everybody likes to share their mediocre losses per se.
Right.
It sounds like
I can tell you my favorite Bitcoin story, which I crushed. But that's irrelevant to this topic. So we can move on. But,
well, I'm sure you wish you had that Bitcoin back at this point, right?
I mean, listen, when you quadruple your money, you never think about 10 times. You're like, I quadrupled. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you could have done 10 times. I'm okay.
So,
but there are some stocks. Back to Ken, I want to talk about one or two. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and like I said, do not take my recommendations when it comes to stocks. Okay, so we've said that 2-3 times. The Columbia Care and the Acreage value, in my opinion, has potential, and I'm just wondering what it is. I don't know. That's when you see something, you're like, why is it? A lot of the times I use sports betting. When the thing I've learned in sports betting is when the majority of people think it goes one way, you should look at the other way. Yeah. You should conceive. So when a lot of people go, it's not really worth that much, you go, it may be worth more than you think. So those two companies I think have some potential. Where this acquisition thing, that's the one thing I wanted to talk to you today about, is whether it's retail stores, because I don't like to use too many names, especially on my retail side. I don't really want to use the name of the company that dominates the retail business right now, and it's acquisitions, because I do business with them, and I don't want to talk bad about them. So, and also trying to be careful, because I really don't know everything.
Without dropping the name, and I understand. And guys, this is his livelihood, so he has to be very, very careful on how this works. So we're gonna try to give you some insight here that you can do some exploration on your own and be able to dig that. Does that sound okay, Chet?
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great.
Cool.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a sneak peek in, but understanding the interior of these companies is a big part of it, because when we're seeing these acquisitions coming through, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And how many deals fall out of that along the way, right? So how many of these stores, say they come in and buy up 10 stores in a state, how many of those stores are really great that are in that state?
Well, and here's the deal: is in any industry, you go to a market, you go, I want to be a part of that market, and the leader in that market, that's a single entity or a smaller entity perceived by you that you can purchase, because I don't want to sell out. I don't want to participate in you. I think I'm good enough to do this on my own. I've done it on my own. I'm going to win in this market, whether it's Chicago or the United States or the Western Hemisphere. And so what happens is these larger corporations, these ones that want to sort of capture the market, if they can't buy the entity they want to influence the market, they will go around and buy the other entities of less value. and squeeze. They'll use their larger purchasing power to squeeze the entity that they once wanted out so that they still have the market.
Interesting. Okay. And you can do that in a lot of business. I'm sure, it doesn't have to be just cannabis. So let's walk through this scenario, because I want to see if you can take me through this. So say I'm a hands-on guy and a hands-on investor, and I'm going to go check out some of these stores that are in my local area. What should I look for of like warning signs, like these guys are not going to make it, or these guys have the potential to be huge, and we see some movement happening. So we walk in the store, Chet and I walk in the store, what are the few things that you just see automatically, like these guys have their shit together or these guys don't?
It used to be a clean appearance, but it no longer is that, because due to the volume, some of these stores do not have a priority of arranging their inventory. They're just trying to get their inventory out and inventory in and out. So I watch for that. How many trucks are coming in? How many forklift drivers? What size of the product they're moving? Is that a pallet of 5 liters or is that a pallet of 20 liters? Are they using totes? 1,000 liter, 200 liter drums? I want to see that volume in and out. I want to see the staff. I want to see how responsive the staff is to my appearance when I show up. You know what I mean? I want to see how responsive the staff is to who's in charge, whether it's the day shift manager or the owner. I want to see what's going on there. I definitely want to see the size of the stock. I want to see how much inventory they're holding on that they shouldn't be holding on to. Oh, they make that product still? No, we still have it. Well, why do you still have it? Because you know what I mean? You're losing inventory space. So right now, to me, it's how much business is going on and how well they're managing it and what sort of inventory they have in stock. And
so if you don't know,
you already know the market.
Yeah. Say you don't know the products very well, right? Could you say, well, I see there's a lot of dust on this one and it's just been sitting there forever. Is that a telltale sign of that? Is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is, or, you can see that they've got 20 products of a line, but only 3 of them move because those are the empty spots on the shelf. That's one other relative sign,
So inventory control is a big one too, looking for that.
It does, because I think this maybe, relate back to the topic we were talking about before. Things are changing. And so if they have a product that was popular 6-7 years ago, but no longer is even, bought and sold, maybe not even manufactured, then they're, and they haven't figured out a way to sort of, fix their inventory issues like that. Holding on to something that no one wants is a problem, and you have to fix it. So that's an issue that I always look for. But I really do just look for it's a pretty simple formula. How much is coming in, how much is going out, and how well are they managing it? Because you can't ask a store owner, hey, what? I mean, you can. I can, because I have a different relationship with these guys.
Yeah.
But if I don't know the store owner, if I'm trying to shop a store and try to figure out its value, I can't ask them what their numbers are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're going to have to make that assumption. You're going to kind of have to make an estimation as you go through the store, right?
Right. And what's funny too is I know a lot of entities, whether they're retailers or licensed producers, and I'll hear about deals that are potential, and I was like, my deal isn't going to go through because one side, I know their books aren't as pretty as their facade. So that's another thing too, is when you hear, oh, these two are working on a deal, and then you go, well, where'd the deal go? 6 months later, oh, that fell through. Well, one of them couldn't figure out what the other one's books look like. They saw the books, or they thought they saw the books, and then, and you'll hear that a lot too.
And if you're looking at these retail operations, I mean, how many of them really have their fucking books together? Is it 50% maybe? Is it? I mean, when you look at
probably a percentage more than actually charge sales tax.
Are there stores still not charging sales tax out there?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's about as far as I can go on that topic.
No, that's okay. I mean, it is what it is.
I'm sure they pay some sort of sales tax. Let's not say they're, but you're supposed to charge the customer and keep a record of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, imagine if you walked into a store and you spent, let's just go on the low mountain. You spent $8,000, and the guy said, you know what? I'm not going to charge you the extra 8 1/4 or 9 1/8 for this.
Just so $8 grand off the top.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. That's almost 10%. That's $800.
Well, we had the mentality in Colorado because I was a store owner of a dispensary, and we had people being like, "Oh man, you're going to charge me tax on my eighth? It's $25 and I got to pay tax." I mean, this is going back to the mentality of the pioneers of this. They believed they didn't want to pay tax on anything, right? It was like
that's why a lot of people got into it, because they didn't believe in the government and how it taxed. So they were going to trade in commodities that weren't taxed.
Yeah, that's a solid point.
Yeah, and it still happens. I mean, you look at the California market, you look at any other over-regulated market, and the taxes on it are sometimes 100%. So, which then breeds, I no longer use black market. I use traditional market when it comes to the reference of cannabis bought and sold.
Yeah, legacy has been a new one that I've been hearing the last probably 6 months.
I like so traditional or legacy. I like that.
Yeah. So I've been hearing that a lot more often.
Yeah, but that'll foster, that'll breed, that'll grow if you don't have to pay taxes. That's the same. That's why a store that doesn't charge sales tax to a customer is probably going to stay in business longer than you perceive, because it's going to get a customer base that goes, well, I don't want to pay 100% tax on a product, or I can just buy it from him at what I would perceive as an equal quality for less.
However, that would show up in your books. Like if somebody's going to purchase, I mean, and your margins are less because you're paying that taxes. You're probably paying some of those taxes out, right? So you might be good in the short term, but in the long term, if you're trying to do an acquisition, you're going to have, purchasers look at you like you're a fucking idiot.
Well, that's the point I was trying to make when you hear about deals going down, and then they're like, well, let's look at the books. And I was like, it's not going to turn out well, so. They're like, what happened to that deal? Yeah, we decided it wasn't in our best interest. Yeah, could have told you that one. But, and that happens it's not so much sales tax, but on a larger scale, when people don't know how to manage payroll or any sort of, liability situations with HR or anything. And then they look at the books and they're like, well, or when, entities don't pay 100, when they're given more than 30-day terms, it starts to get a little sticky when someone deals with somebody else and they're giving them 90-day terms. You're like, well, why do you need 90-day terms? Like, what's the point of that? You don't have shored up enough liquid assets to deal in every 30 days like the rest of us, So things like that too can be. I've
worked with some owners that they'd manage their cash in all different ways for whatever reason, right?
Right.
And depending on your location, your area, I mean, as you are going into, I wanted to ask you, as you're going through a bunch of different states, I know you've focused on a few of them. We talked about them last time too.
Right.
But where do you see the best opportunity in the States right now for whether you want to become, whether you want to become a grower or you want to open a dispensary? Do you still see some opportunity for the little guy out there? That's not an easy question, I know.
No, I would say that in states like California, this is going to be sort of hard for me to say, but the opportunity for little guys still lies maybe in states like California that have programs that sort of want either ethnic or female owned, or that sort of still want to help the little guy and the perceived person that was oppressed, whether it's a woman or a minority or something like that, to give them an opportunity. I think that the system and the bigger dollars have figured out how to rig that. So there's not a lot of opportunity, because it's like, oh, you want a female minority owner? Sure, we'll just get one of our staff or one of our board members to start that business, get that program, and boom, you've manipulated the system. So
yeah, I think that, I think what you're referring to a lot of is the social equity programs that are starting to pop up, which I don't have any issue or topic to discuss about, but it was one of the few ways that I see a smaller participant get an opportunity. Because otherwise, I've seen it personally with some people that I've talked with that are working in states like Massachusetts, and they're actually putting it together. They've had a couple years
Right.
head start, but it's sad. It's a matter of, it's capitalism in a way. I know a lot of these people.
Here's the one thing that I've learned that this analogy that I was taught a long time ago that I use for small business retailers that actually goes even more to the point of conglomerates purchasing each other. There's two reasons to start a company. If you're a single person or a small group of investors, the first reason is the bad reason, which is I started this company so I wouldn't have a boss. I started this company so that I could set my own, the captures of not having a boss, your own schedule, you're in charge, you don't have to answer anybody. Or I started this company to sell it. And so, the first one is I started this company because I wanted to be my own boss, or I had this concept that nobody else did, but I didn't look forward enough to realize that I'm just starting the concept. I'm just creating a commodity to be bought and sold. And so, if you start a company knowing that at the end of it, you're going to sell it because that's what you're doing, which is what a lot of people who make money, they see a void. They start it not because they think that it's a good idea, but because they think it's a good commodity to create to be sold.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and that's one thing that you have to sort of try to figure out is like, are they doing this because it's a good idea, or are they doing this because they want to sell it? And I think it's better to figure out if they want to sell it, because they're going to work harder to make it an attractive product that's going to be worth something.
I want to talk about that because you make an excellent point. I'm speaking to a lot of people out there. A lot of listeners are either in business right now or they're looking to start one. And for you guys that are listening, this is extremely valuable because that definition that Chet just put out there of being able to create something to sell it, there's an actual mind shift that happens when you do that. You think about everything just a bit differently than you would have, oh, well, at least I just work for myself.
I'm doing this because it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So who cares if it's a good idea? Is it a marketable product? Are you, and then once your product is marketable that you're trying to create, are you marketable? Because now you're a creator and a commodity that wants to be bought and sold. This guy, he came up with a great idea. Yeah, let's get a hold of that company. Well, it's not really, if you went, well, no, it's my deal and I don't, or you're like, I made this to sell it. You're going to have more success that way. It's just what happens. There's very few people out there that go, I think even Elon Musk, you could probably ask him, are you doing this because, because I probably want other people to participate economically, right? Not because I'm so, so that's one of the things. The other thing I want to touch on before we run out of time is this growth aspect. This industry, people have to be really careful, because this is one of the things I wanted to talk about while I had time with you. And I know you have more of a business-oriented fiscal covering than a cultural covering in this podcast, which I really think is a void that a lot of people should participate in, is growth through acquisition or growth, legitimate growth. And
organic growth, right?
Yes. Thank you. This industry is dominated by growth of acquisition, which creates a bubble. When your shareholders, they're more valuable. Yeah, because they bought something. You know what I mean? If I have a gold coin and then I buy another gold coin, whether I could afford it or not, I have grown. But maybe I couldn't afford that second gold coin, and now I'm heavily leveraged, or I'm underwater, or I can't manage these two gold coins. I don't have the resources to do that. I don't, whatever widget you want to talk about.
It's basically the land grab, right? The land grab mentality.
Yeah, and I see that's how these retailers in my industry are growing through acquisition, not organic growth. And I see a lot of that in the cannabis LP, those facilities, these larger corporations. They're like, well, they're growing, and then their stocks are more valuable. I was like, but that's an inflated bubble that's going to pop.
So besides the bubble pop, what are the more than the obvious reasons why this would work well, but what's the positive to doing a land grab like that?
Well, if you make yourself perceived to others as more valuable, they will want to participate. So then they will invest, and then they will help, reinforce or sort of backfill that bubble so that it doesn't collapse because they're like, oh, those guys are good. I want to be a participant in that. I'm going to buy some stock of that, and that's the positive, is that you get enough growth to legitimize other investors to sort of support that acquisition. Because I see it a lot of times where I was like, the company that bought that company didn't quite perceive how overvalued that company was, but the investors don't either. Right. So it's like, well, we just purchased this, which I was like, I was about to go out of business. Those guys who sold it just got out just in time.
Smart
now, what
guys.
are the people who bought it going to, right? And what are the people who bought it going to do? How are they going to make it? It was losing money because it was being more poorly managed, or it was a bad concept to begin with. Now, how are the guys who acquired it going to fix that? Or are they just going to say they acquired it?
Okay, good point. So let's go to the organic side. What lessons are learned going through building your company from the ground up?
That it's not easy, that failure leads to success, that following the latest trend, that is not always the best thing, that if you believe in yourself and you believe in your concepts, that you should just stick with it and try not to get too heavily influenced by those that do not have the energy or the resources or the willingness to do what you're doing, but do have the mouth to say what they believe in. I think that is one of the most important things is, when someone goes, oh, this is not a good idea, or you need to do it this way. It's like, well, why don't you start a company and do it that way? So just the belief in yourself, I'm trying to look up a better word, but to have that vitriol, to have that courage to believe in yourself is really one of the things, and if you don't, if you think I'm just doing this to do this, and then you're not going to, your percentage of success is going to be real low.
Yeah, I think, understanding that courage and where that lies is extremely important.
Yeah.
Because as we're entrepreneurs out there, forging through this crazy industry, even though there's a lot of people that are somehow connected, there are so few of us that are truly connected in a positive way. There's a lot of lonely nights, and a lot of lonely days.
And a lot of being, this is to your story, a lot of being screwed over by the people that you brought to the entity or that you thought were actually going to be a help.
Yeah, looking out for those red flags of business 100%. I'm glad you brought that up, but figuring out who you hitch your carriage to is a big deal, especially if you're building organically, right? Because there are going to be opportunities that come up where you guys are going to collaboratively put your nickels together and say, all right, this is what we got. And if they say, well, I had 10 nickels and now I have 5 when the deal comes up, that's a red flag.
Yes.
It's a huge one.
Yes. Yes. So that's the one of the many downfalls or things to look out for when you're trying to organically grow.
But that courage side, I emphasize that courage side because, guys, it can be the difference of success is not being able to have that courage. I want to say vitriol or the vindication. I hate to use the word vindication, but there were many times when I was told you're doing the wrong thing. I said, that's impossible because it feels like this is the only thing, going to Colorado or, other situations, whether it was before there was a completely, legitimate market when you're like, this is terrible. You're going to grow plants in your house against the law. And you're like, that's how it started for me. And then, I moved on, but I see it with even investors who like, this is a great idea, but the other people are like, well, we don't want to get involved in that. I was like, oh man, if you were just by yourself right now and you decided to invest in that, you would kill it. So, that happens in that situation too. So, you got to trust yourself.
Yeah. Believe in yourself.
Yeah. Believe, trust, courage. Chet, these are all amazing things for for the entrepreneurs.
And one other thing too is there's something that I was just talking to my son about this, and I actually first learned it. I'm not a Scientologist. I think it's a ridiculous religion, but all religions have some sort of positive in them. You can look at the positiveness of Christianity and how you should treat others and stuff like that. Or there's each religion has its sayings that are universal true. And the one in Scientology that I keep using is you have to surround yourself with positive people, and therefore you're more likely to get positive results. You surround yourself with negative people, the likelihood is greater that you'll get negative results. So if you're by yourself, it's pretty easy to be positive. But if you start amassing a group, an investment group, a collaboration, a work team, and you realize that they're not all positive, and you may not get all positive results, and it sounds a little hokey, a little, metaphysical, but the more you're surrounded by positiveness, the more positive results will probably be.
I've lived by that for the last 10, 15 years, man. I mean, that is something I probably think about on a daily basis. And, going through the lockdowns period we had and stuff, it's been a challenge. I mean, you've got a lot of negativity that's surrounding our world, that goes into your little bubble and kind of sits there. And then depending on what you're listening to or what you're watching, these are all things that come with, like you said, and surround yourself with positive people and the right people. And it's easier said than done because some people sneak in, and you just got to be, aware at the time and go in with your, with open eyes and understand that people are going to make mistakes, but you have to pick certain things that happen. And I like to hear this. My uncle refers to them as data points. He says, that's a data point. I'll just keep that on the log and we'll see what else comes up. And then once you get a few data points together and you can connect the dots, you can understand what type of person you're dealing with pretty quickly.
I like that, because then you could sort of plot a trajectory. I think that's good.
Exactly.
That's good.
Exactly. So, well, Chet, awesome. Always great to catch up with you. And so you guys, if you guys have any questions about nutrients or Canna, he is going to be on the blog page. He'll have his information there. You can click right through to him, connect to him. He works in several states. He knows all the guys that work throughout the U.S. Like I said, he's been working in it for a long time with not only nutrients, but with Canna directly. And they're honest guys that, it's no bullshit. The products they sell, I don't bring him on to give this commercial. I just, he sells a great product. And so if you're looking at, in any type of growing situation, those guys are super helpful over there. They're all extremely knowledgeable. I mean, all your guys there, Chet, you guys all have a lot of growing background.
Surround yourself with positive people.
Bingo. And so with that said, thanks so much for listening in today, guys. I hope to see you back on Plant Problems next week. And Chet, thank you so much. It's been awesome catching up with you. And I look forward to talking about this here once we really get into legalization, when that happens, to really see what's going on.
I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
You've just listened to another insightful episode of Plant Problems. If you like what you heard so far, don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues. For additional resources or to leave a review, head over to plantproblem.com. Join us again next week on Plant Problems with Tony Frischknecht. We look forward to having conversations with you as we go along this journey.